This podcast is supported by patrons. You can find a full list of them in the description of this episode. Hello, listeners and viewers of Good Morning BSS World podcast. This is Wiktor Doctor, and this is another episode of interesting talks with people who are representing GBS and BPO industry all over the world. Today we are going to focus on two different parts of the world, on LATAM region and on Europe region. And something what connects both of the sides of Atlantic Ocean is cultural differences. And this topic I have a great pleasure to discuss with Christian Soto. Hi Christian, how are you?
Hello, everyone. Hello, Victor. I'm doing great, and you? Happy to be here with you.
Thank you very much for accepting my invitation, and I am so glad to talk to you because you are representing GBS industry and you are coming from LATAM region and you are working in Europe. So this is going to be a very, very interesting talk. But before we will go deeper into this subject, just tell us a few words about yourself, who you are, where do you work?
So, my name is Christian Soto. I work in Clariant, which here in Monopolies are our offices. I actually this month will mark my 5th anniversary in Clariant and in Poland and in which, so all at the same time. I have 14 years experience, 14 plus years experience working and managing teams and leading teams in various industries within the BPO, GBS organizations, and 5 years here in Poland managing multicultural teams that involve Latin Americans from all over the countries of LATAM, and of course also Polish and some other countries within Europe, within MEA. So that's more or less of my background. I also have a Black Belt Six Sigma certification, which helps me also to deal with the day-to-day problem solving.
So the good person to talk to about this subject, which we have to be discussed. 5 years in Poland.
5 years in Poland, yes.
And originally you are coming from?
I am from Mexico, from Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. Yes, originally.
Guadalajara is also a location where some of the GBSs and shared services are having their location, isn't it?
It is. It is. Some of them call Guadalajara the Silicon Valley of Mexico, actually. A lot of companies are also basing their GBSs, their BPOs. Yes.
So Christian, what made you actually to go from very nice place in Mexico to Poland? How did it happen?
I will say that the main thing was curiosity. Curiosity is one of my traits. So I was in a good position leading a team of AR there in Tata, actually, an Indian company, one of the biggest companies in India. And I had already 4 years working there. And then one of my colleagues, who was already working here in Poland for Clarion, contacted me and said, Christian, there will be a vacancy for a management position in Clarion. Would you be interested in applying? Then I give it a thought and curiosity, because I never been to Poland, never been to Europe. So actually curiosity and I find it very attractive also from the career development perspective. So I took a bold move and decided to apply. I was selected, and then I was relocated to Poland. But yes, it was not easy to, let's say, give up to that comfort zone, which I was in a multinational company with a good role, with a um, potential projection, good projection, let's say, career projection. But yes, I just decided to take the step and go into the unknown, and I don't regret that at all.
It's very good to hear that you don't regret that, because Poland creates a lot of, let's say, possibilities to foreigners who are traveling here and are joining the international, let's say, environment of either BPOs or GBSs or any other types of the businesses. But let's come back this 5 years back. So on the day when you were coming here and you were leaving a BPO GBS industry from Mexico. What was your first impression? Did you see already at the very first day some differences which actually were completely different environment in Mexico rather than this what we have in Poland?
So I arrived actually around midnight to the hotel, and then, well, I settled down, I just rest, and the next day I arrived in January. So the next day I was just getting my things in order. I was going to be contacted by someone from the company to help me to establish myself, get my PESEL, my card, SIM card from Poland, and then it was around 3 3 p.m., something like that. And then I looked through the window of the hotel and it was dark. And I say, oh my God, I mean, probably today there's something wrong with the weather. Probably there's some unusual thing happening that is causing this so early, this darkness. But then I went to the bar the same day later in the evening to try a beer. And I was talking to the bartender and I say, today there was something wrong with the weather because it was dark very early. Is this normal? And then she said, yes, this is every day in winter. And right now we are like more or less in the peak of the winter. So you can expect this happening every day for the following 2, 3 months. So that was my first cultural shock because in Mexico, more or less, you have daylight until 6, 7 p.m., 8 in summer.
Yeah, and I think there aren't such big differences when it comes to the sunlight anytime during the year in the Guadalajara region.
Correct, correct. And the other shock, cultural, also was also related to the weather, but it's very, very short. In Mexico, if you see sun, that means it's more or less warm, and you can go without a jacket, more or less. And I saw, and also in my first week in Poland, I saw the window through the window, and I saw some sun, and I decided to go on a light jacket out for a walk and it was cold. I had to come back to the hotel and get a bigger jacket.
Okay, so let's put aside the weather conditions in Mexico and in Poland, and let's now go inside of the business itself. Uh, both, this is my assumption at the moment, and correct me if I'm wrong. But when you were in Guadalajara, you were also already on a team leader's position, so you already had a team who you were managing. Then coming back to Poland, going not back, going to Poland, you are also a leader of a certain team. From that perspective, do you see any differences like between the management style which is being represented in Mexico and in Poland?
Yes, yes. That's a very good question because I was leading teams already for a few years in Mexico, mostly with Mexicans and Indians. So now in here, when I arrived to Poland, I had to lead multicultural teams. So of course there were Latins, but there were people from Mexico, there were people from Brazil, from Argentina, from Peru, and each of these countries, in spite of being Latin or Latins, each country has its a specific. So I will say the first year of my journey in Clarion in a leadership position was to fully understand all of these nuances of the different cultures that I was leading and working with to really get to a point that I could have these options and this baggage and use them according to the culture. That include also, of course, Polish people, which also were part of the team.
And the area of communication between managers, team leaders, supervisors, top management, and employees. Do you see any differences between those countries?
I will say yes. The leadership style in Mexico, it's more directive, autocratic, and here in Europe, what I noticed at the beginning was more democratic, more on the listening side, and on listen what the employee has to say, all their rebuttals, and at the end of the day, just to make questions and just decide together what is the path to follow. That was an interesting difference that I noticed actually.
Okay, so Europe more democratic, Mexico more autocratic, but it doesn't mean that this is like a hard management. I can assume that there is just a different style of communicating this, what is going to happen inside of the processes which people were undertaking.
Yes, and actually, in either one of the countries that we are talking, like it depends on the situation. I am fully believer of this situational leadership. So depending on the situation, depending on the context and on the people involved, you can apply either democratic style, autocratic style, coaching style, etc. Yes.
I also assume that there is one common thing between those countries. Probably the main language which is being used for the communication is English.
Actually, when I first started in the day-to-day job, we use mostly actually Spanish and Portuguese. But let's say inside the team, that was also interesting because inside the team, some people talk to each other in Spanish, some people talk to each other in English because some persons back then were speaking Portuguese but not Spanish. So sometimes English was the common language, and to talk all together, let's say in the huddle meetings, English was the language. Yes.
And in Poland?
And in Poland, mostly English, and of course, it's very worth to learn some basic words of Polish. It's very useful.
Let's focus on employees and the way how the companies are offering like a pool of benefits or something like that to the employees of GBSs and shared services and the BPO companies, both in Poland and in Mexico. Are there some similarities or are there some unique things which are just specific for the certain location?
I will say that mostly are similar, but in terms of security, Poland itself is way safer than Mexico, and that's something that is super appreciated by us, including myself. And also, I will say that the big difference is in both of the countries you have, like, of course, team meetings, team outings, some of the employee engagement activities, but also in terms of medical insurance, private medical insurance. In both countries you have, but I will say that to be honest, here in Poland, Medicover, within Medicover or these insurance companies available in the market, of course, they are um, way better than the ones that we have in Mexico in terms of availability of services, the speed, and also price of the additional or the things that are part of the package and the services available to employees. I will say here are this is also a positive positive remark on like in Poland is better than in Mexico in this matter as well.
Does it mean it's a little cheaper in Poland than in Mexico when it comes to the medical services?
Yes, cheaper, and also the availability of the appointments is faster. I know that also in Poland, sometimes you need to wait some months, but in Mexico, sometimes, depending on the specialist, you can wait up to a year or even 2 years, depending.
Oh, Christian, I will tell you that if you are using the public medical care in Poland, for some of the services, you will need to wait months and months. And of course, there is a difference when you are using the private medical support, but in the public one, sometimes it is probably similar to this what you experience in Mexico. Anyway, let's leave the medical stuff aside. I will stay with this human factor and the moment when people are joining the companies. Do you see any differences in this recruitment process and onboarding process between this what is happening in Mexico based on your Guadalajara's experience and based in here in Poland?
Yes, I will say the main difference is that in Guadalajara, you have a big pool of candidates, all of them eager to join the company, all of them capable, more or less, and with experience. And in Poland, here we face some challenges in terms because we need the specific skills and specific languages. So the pool of candidates is reduced. So that makes harder the recruitment process and to find the proper candidate. And on top of that, also sometimes you only find a candidate of course, in Latin America, like myself, and you need to also bring them. And that involves all of the administrative processes that take time. So you need to plan in advance. We need to plan in advance, and we need to be diligent to be able to have the people on board and joining the team and being operational and support the operation as soon as possible. So all that requires our effort as managers to be prepared and to have a backup plan and a structure to do it properly.
One extra question about those languages. Earlier on, when you were already sharing some kind of your experience, you were mentioning that in Mexico there are people who are English speakers, Portuguese speakers, Spanish speakers, some representatives of Indian languages. In Europe, I believe there is a wider scope of the languages. Yeah, so probably correct me if I'm wrong, because maybe I am wrong. But it is easier in Europe to find other languages than those Spanish, Portuguese, or English.
Yes, you are right, because now, well, I started my career in Clarion having only Latin America, but recently I have the 45 team members, and to all together we manage Latin America market and EMEA market. So this means Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So we require some European languages as well. And I will say you can find, yes, more languages here, capabilities. And I will say the only challenge in the market right now, and I will say, is to find proper German speakers with experience. That's the only one challenging.
Everyone is looking for Germans now, but this is like probably something what is happening now at the moment across Europe, that Germany as a country is outsourcing more, is looking for more near shoring and offshoring jobs. So that's why there is such a big demand for the German speakers. So we will see. We will see. I know it is not easy for any of the companies who are running their shared services or GBSs around Europe.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, let's focus a little bit on a day-to-day, let's say, work activities within the GBS. Are there any differences between the way how the job is being organized in the operation center in LATAM region and in Europe?
I will say yes, because that was one of my observations during my first year in Clarion. What I noticed is that in our GBS, we had a robust system of policies, of procedures in place that allow us to do things properly, operationally speaking, and also on the people management. So actually, that's why it took me like 1 year to fully be like the fully onboarded on the cultural aspect and also on the procedures and policies perspective. Whereas in Mexico is more, let's say, free and more open to be flexible and not the structure. And then you kind of go with the flow. Of course, you have these global structures, but I will say also that's the main difference that I observe between BPO organizations and GBS organizations. Like GBS organizations tend to have more structure, yet efficient policies and procedures to perform their operations. Whereas in BPOs organizations, based on my experience, it's you may have a robust system, but in practice, it's not that efficient. I'm speaking purely on my own experience.
Yeah, as all of us, yeah, I also have my own experiences working with other businesses, so it's sometimes hard to have a typically very objective view of the market. But anyway, we are building our opinions on the places where we are involved deeper in work of certain organizations. When it comes to the let's say loyalty of employees for the companies, do you see that this loyalty is bigger on the LATAM region side or on the European side? I mean, the time, how long people stay with one organization.
I will say that's actually interesting question because for me, I will say it depends on how the manager also treat each one of the team members to detect the high performers, the normal performers, the lower performers, and based on that, allocate the resources. And from that aspect specifically, I will say it depends more on the person rather than the culture and also the manager style, leadership style. I will say that, yes.
Okay, okay. And after hours, how is it? Are there any differences when people just do their job, what they need to be done, then the office day is getting to the end? Is it like, are there any similarities or differences what people do after hours? Do they spend time together with their team workers, or rather everyone goes to their families? Do you see any differences on that side?
I do. In that side, I do see some differences. For example, in Mexico, we have these after hours gatherings, and usually once, twice per week, depending on the group. After hours, after finishing our shift, we went to a wings place. These are very common in Mexico. You go, you had some hot wings, some beer, and you talk to each other, and you just spend some time, and you build up on a personal relationship, but at the same time, you are with colleagues from work. So that also helps to foster the professional relationship. And in here, more on the European cultures, or let's say Polish culture, what I notice is, of course, it's also just generalizing, but more or less, Polish appreciate like, okay, I finish my work, I go with my family, or I go to do my own personal stuff, and people appreciates that to have that separation. And actually, also that's something that I have learned with, and I think both of views are not right or wrong, but you can use them depending also on your needs and on your stage of life. And so that's what I would say. But yes, in here we do have differences.
So now, going to the end of our conversation, it's the time for tough questions. And the tough questions, I have two of them. The first one is, what did you like the most working in Guadalajara? And now, what do you like the most working in Poland? And the opposite question is, what was the area where you felt, let's say, less comfortable or you disliked working in on the Mexico side and in here in Poland?
Okay, so the thing that I will say dislike the most is like in this case working here in Europe, the culture demands that the manager has proper acumen of leadership skills, to treat the people properly, to give opportunities, to be very diligent, to manage the time properly in order to maintain the team members to achieve the targets. You need to be always pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. Otherwise, you are behind and you will not survive. And in Mexico, it's a little bit more comfortable because of what I mentioned. Uh, you have a lot of pool of talents, and you have like at your disposal people that you can just get whenever you need. And so I will say that is the most uncomfortable thing. But yet, I appreciate because that actually has helped me to push myself to be a better person, better professional.
Thank you very much for
And
that.
yes, and the other part was,
And the other one was the opposite. So, what did you dislike or felt less comfortable?
less comfortable. So I will say, but this maybe more from the this is from the personal side. Of course, being here in Poland, the less comfortable side is that I'm away from my family, that I am away from my loved ones. So this is also something that it's uncomfortable, but of course, I find a way to spend some video calls with my loved ones there in Mexico. And of course, it's good to plan some trips to go there and recharge energy, spend times with them, and then come back and go again to continue.
That's the nature of being an expat somehow. Yeah. If you are working somewhere abroad, then you are away from your family. So there are two choices. You can visit them from time to time, or you can just take them, bring them to you to live with you and spend the time not only on the business level, but also on these private ones. But that's how the world is being created. Yeah. It gave us a lot of opportunities to work wherever the working opportunities are.
Yes, exactly. So it's part of the deal.
Yeah, it's part of the deal. Absolutely. Christian, the very last thing, did we miss anything? Are there any things which are in your head which are worth to mention when it comes to some kind of interesting things regarding the multicultural approach or multinational approach or the multicultural environments which are being created either in Mexico or in Europe?
Yes, actually, I was thinking throughout our questions, and it's good that you asked because we can come back to this communication topic. Something that I think is worth noting and that I can share based on my experience is that also on the communication side with the team members, for example, Latin Americas, you need certain style of communication to talk with them about performance. You need to be a little bit more around the topic. You need to build the structure in order to give them either feedback either of something is growing wrong, something that they need to improve. You need to prepare the terrain for that. And with the European culture, mostly with Polish, you can be more straightforward. That's something that I notice. So also that this is important because this actually makes a difference when you want to influence people to improve their performance. So I will say this is also worth noting from my perspective.
Does it mean that if we were very direct in talks to employees in Mexico, they wouldn't feel too comfortable about that?
Correct, correct.
Okay, Christian. Anyway, thank you very much for today. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, how to find you? What's the best way to contact yourself?
So the best way to contact me is on my LinkedIn profile, and well, I am also very happy to have participated in this podcast, and I am available in case anyone has any further questions. I will be happy to have a conversation.
So I will make sure to add your LinkedIn link to the description of today's episode. So if anyone wants to get more information about how to work in Mexico, what are the differences, the cultural differences between working in LATAM region and in Europe, in European part of our continent, then they will know who to reach. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Hasta luego.
Hasta luego.